enjoyed tonight's Blacklist? Raise your hand. Yes.
Okay, this is our review of the Blacklist season 9, episode 16, entitled Helen Maghi. But yeah, I love that moment. That was it was the way that they filmed it, where everyone was just sort of awkwardly just standing around, and then Reddington, of all people, was just like,
Oh, he shot his hand up so proudly. He is so funny. Oh my God. I love this episode.
this episode was really surprisingly funny. Like, this is the thing. It's like there wasn't necessarily as much like overall movement as maybe I would have liked, but there were just so many individual moments. Like, I loved that how he sort of was referring to Aram and how he was just so upset about Aram's sense of morality. Like, he said something kind of like he's a conscience with ears. I'm probably butchering the quote or something, but it was really, really funny.
No, this was a very funny episode. There was like so many touching moments in this episode. I think there was a little bit of movement on some things. Lou, we all knew you were going to roll on Harold. Come on.
No
you were
kidding.
no way.
Well, we're going to, of course, get into all of that, but before we do, hit that subscribe button. And in case you guys didn't know, overnight we hit 60,000 subscribers, which is incredible, which is absolutely worth every dance move in the world. Like, we are so grateful. We are going to have quite the celebration all about this.
Yeah, we have a celebration coming up tonight. I made a YouTube cake for it. It's over on our Instagram, Matt and Jess TV. But we also wanted to celebrate here with you guys tonight, because without you guys, this never would have happened. And our Blacklist community here and your viewership has really helped us grow to this spot over the years. So thank you very much.
Okay, well now, what better way to celebrate than to dive headfirst into the thing that has drove us all collectively crazy, which is the latest update on the night of Liz's death. Okay, so here's a little bit of what we know now. There is a secret vault in Mount Bastion, which is just about the most nefarious name for a mountain you can possibly think of.
Yeah, and after what was just a super fun heist, I love this show for heists. They do it so well, 10 out of 10. We end up in this situation where Reggie had this key, but because he's an ex-cop, he never would have been given this key. So this key had to have come through somebody above him. And because of that, I mean, Reddington, of course, has a key to this.
Yeah.
So he ends up going there, this huge heist, he gets in, and the vault is empty except for this one box that both Dembe and Reddington are looking at, being like, we're the only two people that should have really known about this box. Why is it here? Why would he know about it? It is filled with discs that explain every single part of Reddington's business. Everything that Liz was going to need to know. It was a master class in Reddington's empire. So it comes back again to my theory, which is I truly think that if it's not Marvin, and I still think that it is, because I think Marvin would know about this to some degree. He is his lawyer. Like, he knows everything. This has to be somebody in Reddington's organization. And why hasn't Reddington looked inward at this point? I understand that everything that happened with Marvin when he brought in Brimley, maybe he's got some blinders onto that where he's kind of like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I am not going to look at someone in my organization. I'm going to trust them. But come on, like, how is somebody going to know about that specifically? Reddington, Dembe are kind of like, we're the only two people that should know about it. It has to be internal.
It doesn't feel like there's any other option at this point, because the only other option would be that someone internal would tell someone else, and if that someone else is responsible for this, then guess what? It still comes back to somebody who was internal, and there's no reason to think that it was anybody else. And yeah, Marvin, at this point, your Marvin theory has to be the most obvious explanation, just because He is a lawyer. He's had longtime connections with Raymond Reddington, and he is someone, and I think this is really important, that whoever is this person, they have to be important enough in the, sort of the fabric of this show for us to really care about them. It can't be a one episode stooge who helped Reddington back in season 3. Like, if that happens, we're all just going to be sort of sitting here and just being like, well, what was the point of all of this?
Yeah, and one of the other things that came out that made me feel, of course, I'm feeling more and more confident about this, is something that we just said, which is, they were kind of, her and Reddington were talking about the idea of, if somebody wants to get to you, why didn't they just kill you? And she was kind of like, well, it might be someone who loves you. And when they came across these CDs where it was like, oh, and here's, the organization and whatever, we know that Marvin loves Raymond.
Yes.
He does. I don't think he's doing this to be like, I'm gonna, take down the Empire. The motive that I think it is that he really loves Raymond. He cares about him so deeply. He cares about the organization so deeply, and he just never believed in Liz. He's been so vocal about it that Liz was not going to be able to run this. She was going to run it into the ground. And Marvin's job as his lawyer, as his friend, as someone who loves him, is to protect Raymond, not Liz, Raymond. So I really still think it's him.
All right, is it time to dive into crazy theory corner? Because here is a humdinger for everyone, and I'm pretty sure we've talked a little bit about this already. Because here's the reality of everything is that I'm fairly confident that it is your Marvin theory. All of the evidence is absolutely there, but I'm gonna throw this off the old noggin here, and we're gonna see what happens with it.
Let's do it.
Katarina Rostova.
Nice.
Okay, this is where
I don't think it's that off the wall,
Okay,
Matt.
here is the thing. This is what I will get back to Panabaker later, but I'm kind of off the Panabaker train right now. But okay, Katarina. What makes this fascinating to me is the notion that if the Blacklist really wants to just make people scream their heads off at the end of this season if they reveal something, I think that would certainly be a shocking reveal. It would completely sort of nullify all the theories that Reddington is Katarina, and beyond all of that, what do we know? We know that at least at one point, she had a very acute understanding of this Reddington. And I think whoever this Reddington is, like, there is an amount of care and an amount of affection for Katarina and vice versa. Like, they do clearly care about each other on some level. But okay, now this is where it gets even more interesting to me, is that if the real Katarina is still somewhere out there, is she really going to love the idea of Liz Keene being thrown fully into this life that Raymond Reddington had sort of previously built and established for her? I could see her having a lot of concerns over it. Where I start to sort of lose the focus here a little bit is the idea of, okay, then why would Katarina kill her unless she somehow thinks that dying is a better fate than working as Reddington down the road?
Maybe Van Dyke missed. Maybe it wasn't actually meant for Liz and he screwed up. I mean, things happen, right? It's very possible. It's just, I've seen some of the comments out there that a lot of you are thinking that the Marvin theory just is a little bit too simple for this show. And, something like this is a little more complicated, which makes more sense for the show. But I do want to remind everybody that the creative force that made this show as complicated as it is or was is no longer with the show anymore. John Bokenkamp has left the show. And there are new people working on the show along with the other John. And it has felt like this season is less complicated but still meaty with the mysteries, and it feels like we are moving towards a big payoff. And for me, Marvin would be a big payoff because he is such an important character on the show and important to Reddington. Katarina would be a very big payoff because, we really haven't gotten enough of really like what happened there. We've got what the show has shown us, where we're kind of like left to think about it on our own and make it up in our head on our own. I know that some of you will come for me in the comments for saying that, but unless it's absolutely spelled out where Raymond says, I'm Katarina, it is left up to interpretation.
Yeah, and I agree with that fully.
Please don't come for me.
I
We're celebrating
this
tonight,
is a
guys. We
good night. No,
celebrate.
see, it's of course it's possible, but it's also
Yes,
possible
yes,
it's not. Like there
yes,
is
yes.
ambiguity, and I think ambiguity for now is fine. Plus, if we did not have ambiguity, I could not spew out this crazy Katarina theory that is almost certainly not true, but it's really
I
fun to think about, and it's fun to
know.
sort of tie your head in knots about. But okay, I do think though that this episode can pretty much put to bed entirely the idea that Lou Sloan is somehow behind all this. Like, I've seen that here and there, and I think it's further established that it's just not feasible. He doesn't even have a motivation to want Liz dead in the first place.
No, he doesn't. I didn't trust him, but I just didn't think that it was him. He truly doesn't have any connection to what's going on with Liz and her death. Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, but it is not surprising that we were in this situation where Cooper was offered a deal and he was like 2 years, off with good behavior, 18 months. I can do that. It'll be all okay. And of course, what happens? Lou rolls on him, and then he ends up in this situation where he's going to have to do a lot more than that.
Lou rolled faster than a bowling ball going down the alley. Like, this guy, he did not. Cooper, you need to assess your friends better when it comes to how much you trust them. I know Lou, you didn't ask Lou to do some of this stuff, but he did it anyway. And this is kind of all this does raise some questions on me, though, that if Lou was so desperate to avoid prison, why did he decide to help Cooper in the first place?
Yeah, it was all very strange, but I mean, it did bring out these really tender moments with Cooper and Agnes
Yes.
making her pancakes and putting all that butter on it. Her even being like, "Oh, this is a lot of butter." No, my sweetheart, it is not. You put on all the butter if you're feeling a little naughty with your pancakes. It is the way to go.
Raise your hand if you want Cooper to make you pancakes.
With all that butter, I have two
we
hands going on.
We don't have
with
enough
it.
hands in order to properly assess them. But no, yeah, the moments I think with Cooper throughout this entire episode, I think were really, really good. I mean, first and foremost, he is in this spot where he's like, okay, I'm probably going to go to prison, so I need to find somebody who's going to run the task force. And he chooses, of all people, Aram.
You were right.
Okay, okay, see. Okay, I don't know if this is a real pat on the back moment here, but it's
Matt called this. He called this.
okay. This is the thing is that I just think the Blacklist and the writers wanted to do something different here, and I think they want to constantly mix things up, and I think because we've sort of seen Wrestler in this position before, and the show even kind of alluded to that in this episode, and they're not going to make it Park, who has a serious bloodlust problem, and Dembe was just recently a criminal, so it was like, okay, there's not really a lot of other options here.
Yeah, at first when this was coming about and this is the thing about Aram that I really wanted to see a change in, and I saw it in this episode, and I do hope that it will continue.
Yeah.
Is he's always been very nervous about a lot of stuff, and he questions himself a lot. And after almost a decade of doing this, I would have thought that his confidence would have grown with the character, but it seems like this season he's even more nervous about himself and his confidence than like ever before. So he ends up getting the boss spot. He's really nervous, and he is the way that he's been. And I was kind of like, oh man, like I want this character to grow. He needs to grow, and he needs to start feeling a little bit more confident. He doesn't need to come out and be like, I'm amazing, I'm Aram, I can do anything. But he does need to grow as a character, and we saw that. Yeah. So I was really happy with that, where he ends up making this really big decision that ended up biting him in the butt.
Yeah.
Where he gets what he needs, but he also takes something away from Reddington. There is not a lot of give and take. Aram took, and then he took again. And I understand 100% where Reddington is coming from with this one. Like, his word does have to mean something, or no one's going to be able to trust him. And his word with the task force has to mean something, and Aram lied to him straight up lied to him. So I don't know how this is really going to work out, but I actually think Aram made a mistake with that.
Yeah, I think he did too, and but it's interesting because like I think he did make a mistake
But he
too.
did it with
He
confidence.
did it with confidence, and he did it because he thought he was doing the right thing. And I think that's what makes Aram interesting and a very. It's good that he's not the same exact boss as
Yeah.
Cooper
Yeah.
because we're not just seeing a repeat of things. And occasionally, not very often, but every so often, it's good that Reddington gets a little bit duped. Not like season 8 where it felt like Liz was like outsmarting him and like playing on God mode the entire season,
Yeah.
but like every now and then Reddington is imperfect. He's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be able to judge people correctly. You know, he understandably had a certain judgment of Aram as this is somebody who's probably not going to try to pull one over on me. And he did, and it leads to this position where now Cooper may be the only person Reddington really wants to work with anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. I applaud his confidence, but I really do think Aram screwed that up because it does put them in a position now. Reddington doesn't want to work with Aram because he doesn't trust him, and rightly so. He did what he did because he thought that it was going to be exactly what was laid out to him, or at least what he felt it was laid out to
Yeah.
him, where later Aram was kind of like, I didn't exactly say that, but it's like, all right, I get where Cooper's also coming from, where he's kind of like, you don't like it when it happens to you, but at the same time, now they're here where Reddington's kind of like, I'm going to take my ball and go home. If I can't trust him, then no.
This the part of the episode where the agents come in to transport Helen away. This is so ridiculous to me because like I think we all knew that those agents were fake, and
Transparent.
I feel like it was 100. I feel like even the task force knew that those agents were probably fake, but at the same time, it's like Dembe like checked their ID, made sure they were legit, and all this other stuff, and it's like, okay, well, what can you really do at this point? You can't just be like, no, you can't take them because we think you're a spy. We don't like the cut of your jib.
Yes, you can. You can make a call. Like, nobody there made any decisions to go a little bit further. They all know that Aram just screwed over Reddington. Like, at that point, it would have made more sense where Wrestler would be like, you know what? I'm going to bring her over there. Like, all of us are all going to get into the car together and we're all going to take a drive. Like, it was just bizarre.
You know what I kind of wish happened now that you brought all this up? I wish that they had just told them, okay, hold on, we're going to wait a few hours. And then, like, the other people show up, like the real transport people. And then it's like a game of to tell the truth where they're like, we're the real people. No, we're the... And they're just, like, fighting amongst themselves and they have to figure out which ones are the real ones.
Yeah, it was... I didn't believe this scene that everyone just was like, oh, check your ID, A-okay.
Okay, now we got to talk about Panabaker here because Panabaker, Reddington's, okay, I think we all agree that the best Reddington moment of the episode is him raising his hand. But the second best Reddington moment of this episode is him just like completely, just like Mortal Kombat finishing moving Panabaker when it comes to the, oh, you think you're gonna not help me with all of this? Here is this recording that I took of you about you deciding to make a hard decision that's a little bit against morals because you wanted to help someone that you cared about. It's like it didn't dawn on me.
A little bit against morals.
Okay, so I understate things quite a bit here. Let's just okay. I am not good at task force stuff. I am not the moral police. I'm just going to run out of the room now.
Once you bring in Brimley for something and you're okay with it, then backdating a little bit of paperwork to give Cooper some time here, like whatever issue is going on between her and Cooper is clearly alive and well.
Yeah.
If at that point, Reddington needs to be the moral police to kind of be like, you're not willing to backdate a little bit of paperwork, but you are willing to come here and deal with this with Brimley. Like, come on.
I love that moment so much. I loved everything about it.
So good.
I love Panabaker's face. I loved her reaction.
What did she expect?
Come
on.
I loved her saying to Reddington, "You son of a bee," and then Reddington responding with being like, "Well, you haven't met my father." Like, oh, that entire scene was just so unbelievably good. I mean, ultimately, this is all another reminder, though, that I think Panabaker is probably not behind everything with Liz's death, just because if she's getting rattled by Reddington in this situation, I just can't envision her plotting out something as big and elaborate as what we ended up seeing when it comes to the blackmailer and the night of Liz's death. It's probably too much.
I just don't think that she's connected to it, especially when it comes to taking the discs to
Yeah.
learn how to run the empire. She's a senator. What is she also running a criminal empire? Like, what, she never sleeps? She's one of these robot dolls that we had a couple of episodes ago. Like, there's not time for both of those things. I just don't think she's interested in Reddington's empire or running it, or like, you know, if she wanted to make sure that it was destroyed, then why would she keep those? They would be in a fire somewhere. It's just, I just don't see the connection.
I love that we've mentioned the robot dolls in pretty much every video since
It's
that episode
so
aired. Like, you all
dumb.
thought it would be. This will never be forgotten. This is why I'm not saying it was good, but it was memorable.
It was
I will
memorable.
give them that. But all right, well, hopefully we have some more great Blacklist stuff coming up. Of course, we will be back next week to preview what is coming up next. So, of course, hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any of those updates. Follow us on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV, and we will see you here next time.